Video 5 Survey Data. Today we're going to be working with output from a survey which is in tabular format. Let's start by clicking on Cases in the navigation view on the left. When we converted our files into cases earlier, each case became a container holding the data for one person. At the moment, each person, for example Quinn, only has one file linked to their case. Next, we're going to import some new files. After that, you'll notice that some people appear in multiple files. In those situations, a case might have 3 files linked to it, while others may still have only one. Now let's click on Case Classifications in the navigation view on the left. Here we see the classification called Person. Earlier, we set these cases as persons and assigned 2 attributes to them, gender and reply. Importing a dataset or a table of information works a little differently than importing individual documents like we did earlier. Before we bring the data in, it's a good idea to set up our folders so everything stays organized. Just like we did when we created a folder for reviews, let's right-click on Files in the navigation pane on the left and choose New Folder. In the name field, type Survey and then click OK. Now, when we import our survey data, it will go into this specific folder instead of being mixed in with everything else. While you could keep all files in one place, using a clear folder structure makes your project much easier to manage. Before we import, it's always a good idea to take a quick look at the dataset to confirm the format and get familiar with the contents. In this case, our data is stored in an Excel worksheet, so let's open it up. In column A, we see names we recognize: Quinn, Mohammed, Olivia, Sam, and Shahira, along with some new people like Robert, Owen, Kim, and Carol. The following columns B through H contain a series of closed-ended questions where participants selected from a series of options. When we import the data, the closed-ended questions will appear in the case classification table. Then, in column I, there's an open-ended question. If you could change anything about the way our store does business, what would it be? This is where participants could type their own free text responses. When we bring this dataset into NVivo, the open-ended responses are what we'll actually code, much like we did with the review files earlier. For now, we'll close the Excel file, so we know for certain it's in Excel format, not CSV or any other type. Back in NVivo, let's right-click the survey folder in the navigation pane, hover over Import Survey, and then choose from Microsoft Excel file. A File Explorer window will appear. Navigate to the Excel file we just reviewed, select it, and then click Open in the bottom right. When importing survey or other tabular data, NVivo does some of the setup work for us automatically. A Survey Import Wizard window now appears and lets us know that each respondent will automatically be stored as a case. This is a big difference from when we imported Word files earlier. Then we had to manually convert each file into a case. With tabular data, NVivo handles that step for us during the import process. In our survey data, column A contains the respondents' names. NVivo will automatically store each of these respondents as cases. The Survey Import Wizard also lets us know that any closed-ended questions will be added as attributes to the case classification table we created earlier. Let's quickly take a look at that table. In the navigation pane on the left, click Case Classifications under the Cases heading. Then, in the main workspace, right-click Person and choose Open Classification Table. The workspace will split, showing us our cases, Quinn, Mohammed, Olivia, Sam, and Shahira, in a table. We can see their existing attributes such as gender and reply with values already assigned. When we import our survey data, each closed-ended question will appear as a new column in the classification table, creating additional attributes for each person. With that in mind, let's return to the Survey Import Wizard. The wizard also lets us know that open-ended questions will be created as codes rather than attributes like the closed-ended questions. To move forward, we'll click the Next button at the bottom right corner of the window. We're now on step 2. The wizard asks, how many rows are used for your question headers? To the right of this prompt, there's a drop-down menu. Below we can see a preview of the survey data. Since our questions are all in the first row, we'll leave the drop-down at the default value of 1. It's best to have only one header row because multiple rows can sometimes cause errors during import. The wizard also asks about the order of dates, with a drop-down menu to the right of the question. The default is year, month, day. Our dataset doesn't have any dates, so we can leave this as is. We're now ready to proceed to step 3, and we'll click the next button again at the bottom right corner of the window. Step 3 is titled Manage Your Survey Respondents. Here the wizard presents 3 separate questions, including the storage location of our cases. The default location it suggests is Cases Cleaned Grocery Store, which would create a subfolder under Cases in the navigation pane. For our project, however, we want to merge these respondents with the cases we already have. Since we're comparing the same people across reviews, the survey, and the focus group, it makes sense to keep all of their data together in one place. I'm going to change the storage location so that the survey respondents are saved at the top-level cases, rather than creating a subfolder. Next, the import wizard asks us to select a unique ID for each case. In our spreadsheet, column A was labeled Response ID and contains the names of the respondents. I'll select this as the unique identifier for each case. Finally, the import wizard asks if we want cases to be grouped with an existing classification. For example, if Quinn appears in both the survey and a previous Google review, NVivo will recognize this and merge the data. We don't want to create a new classification here. Instead, we'll add the survey data to existing classification. To do this, check the box next to Add to Existing Classification, with the default classification set to Person. This will merge the survey responses into the table we saw earlier when we right-clicked Person under the Case Classification pane and selected Open Classification Table. We'll now click the next button at the bottom right of the window to proceed. We're now presented with a window showing each respondent individually alongside their answers to the survey questions. There are buttons to navigate to the next respondent and make any changes we wish. We also have options to mark answers as closed-ended, open-ended, or exclude them from import. If we wanted to remove any variables, we could do so, but for this tutorial, we'll leave everything as is. We'll now click the next button at the bottom right of the window to proceed. At this point, Windows users have the option to enable auto-coding for themes or auto-coding for sentiment, but I'll leave both unchecked for now. You can explore these options on your own if you like. Then click Finish. Once the import is complete, the Close button will become active. Click Close to exit the wizard. Let's return to the Person Classification table to review the results. You'll see the closed-ended questions have been added as new attributes in the table. The first step now is to clean up the classification table. This means checking for errors and adding any missing information. For example, respondents Carol, Kim, Owen, and Robert didn't provide gender in the survey, so that attribute wasn't automatically populated. If we know this information, we can manually add it. For the purposes of this video series, let's assume we know each respondent's gender. We can update values by clicking directly on individual cells. First, let's update Carol's entry to indicate that she is female. The next field to update is Reply. Remember, we set the replies to default to No. Since Carol didn't receive a reply because she didn't submit a Google review, it's more accurate to change this value to Not Applicable rather than leaving it as No. Kim is non-binary, with reply set to Non-Applicable. Owen is male, also not applicable, and Robert is male, not applicable as well. If, for example, someone like Quinn from the Google reviews hadn't participated in the survey, their responses would appear unassigned. In this case, we can see that doesn't happen. All the reviewers are included in the survey. We could double-check the data to confirm this, but everything looks correct. At this point, our data cleaning is complete and all attributes are up to date. The Survey Import Wizard also created and opened a new tab in our main NVivo workspace. This tab is titled Cleaned Grocery Store, which matches the name of our imported Excel survey file. When we click on this tab, the entire survey data table is displayed. Most of the cells are grayed out. These are the closed-ended questions and cannot be changed in this table. If we scroll to the right, however, we can see the last column is not grayed out. It contains the open-ended responses. While we still can't edit the data here, we can highlight the text to assign codes and identify themes, which we'll do shortly. Before we get to that, let's close both the Cleaned Grocery Store tab and the Person Case Classification tab. Now, let's take a look at another outcome of the survey import wizard. If we click on codes in the navigation pane on the left, we can see the codes we worked with previously. These are our upper-level codes. There's also a folder that the import process created automatically. You can reveal it by clicking the small arrow to the left of codes in the navigation pane. Let's click on this folder to open it. Inside, we'll find the open-ended survey question, now showing in the main NVivo workspace. In our project, there is one item in the list corresponding to the single open-ended question in our survey. If there had been 5 open-ended questions, there would be 5 items in this folder. Double-clicking on a question lets you see all the individual responses. This view is useful for comparing how different participants answered a question rather than viewing the responses in the tabular survey format. And that wraps up the data import process. We've cleaned up some of the data in our classification table, and now we're ready to do our line-by-line coding. Let's close the tab showing the open-ended responses. To code our data, we need to reopen the table with the grayed out, uneditable cells. In the navigation pane, click on the Survey folder under the Data heading, then double-click Cleaned Grocery Store to launch the survey results in table format in the main workspace. Scroll to the far right. This last column contains the highlightable text that we can code. Coding works the same way as in the previous session. Make sure your codes pane is visible in the main workspace alongside the survey data in the split screen view. To do this, go to the navigation pane on the left and click Codes. You can either drag codes into your top-level coding folder, which is the Cleaned Up Codes folder we created before, or for this new dataset, you can work within the Codes subfolder titled Cleaned Grocery Store. Let's click on that folder within the navigation pane. I suggest working this way, especially since we're dealing with a new dataset. This subfolder already contains an initial code that applies to all the responses, which we can leave as is. Okay, so let's start by reading the first answer and coding it. I would like to see a greater selection of gluten-free options. Staff didn't really seem to know whether or not they had any products I was looking for. Here we have 2 distinct concepts. First, I'll highlight the first sentence and drag it into an empty spot in the codes pane. This will prompt me to create a new code, which I'll name Poor Selection, and then click OK. Next, the second sentence addresses the staff not knowing what they were talking about. I'll highlight this sentence, drag it to another empty spot in the codes pane, and when prompted, name the new code Unknowledgeable Staff, and then click OK. Even though some concepts may overlap with other data, we're coding them separately in this subcategory for now. Later, we'll clean up the codes and merge them with our other data. This approach lets us create a draft specifically for the survey responses before integrating the key information into our overall coding framework. Okay, the next answer reads, I tend to work during your opening hours. It would be nice to have 1 or 2 days where the hours extended to accommodate those of us working 9 to 5. I'll highlight the entire answer, drag it into the empty spot in the codes pane, and name this new code Better Hours, and then click OK. The following answer simply states, I think the store should continue doing what it's doing. We don't need to code this one, as it doesn't provide new information or suggest changes. Remember, you don't have to code everything. The next answer says, I was surprised at how unknowledgeable the employees were about their products. Given that this is a boutique-style grocery store, I expect better service. It might be worth developing a more detailed training program. First, I'll highlight the entire answer and drag it to the Unknowledgeable Staff code in the codes pane. Next, I'll highlight the part about developing a more detailed training program and drag it to an empty spot in the codes pane. When prompted, we'll name this new code Need a Training Program, and then click OK. This way, we're differentiating the 2 ideas for now, and we can merge or refine them later if needed. The next answer reads, I really like the sales display. They encouraged me to purchase things I wouldn't have thought of. Please keep doing this. We're not evaluating whether it's good or bad. This respondent liked it. Highlight the entire answer, drag it to an empty spot in the codes pane, name the new code Nice Displays, and click OK. The following answer states, while the store is clean and selection is great, I'm constantly frustrated by the lack of knowledge of the staff. please improve training or hire people who care about the store. Here, training is identified as an issue. Highlight the entire answer first. For the concept of improved training, we'll follow our previous approach, drag this answer to unknowledgeable staff code, and then drag it again to need a training program code. Next, focus on the first part of the sentence. While the store is clean and selection is great, since it mentions positive aspects of the store, highlight this partial sentence and drag it into a blank spot in the codes pane. Name this new code Good Selection and click OK. We can also create another code for cleanliness. Highlight the same partial sentence, drag it to a new blank spot in the codes pane, and name this code Clean Store, then click OK. The next answer reads, I find the prices are considerably higher for the same products at your store than some of your competitors. I understand that it is hard being a smaller business, but I can't justify shopping here anymore. This addresses pricing. Highlight the answer, drag it into an empty spot in the codes pane, and when prompted, name the new code, High Prices, then click OK. Finally, the next answer states, I think the staff needs better training. They don't seem to be overly knowledgeable or friendly. This relates to training again. Highlight the entire answer and drag it to the existing Need a Training Program code in the codes pane. Lastly, we have an answer that reads, I think this store should think about how they order their produce. While there's a wide selection, they're often wilted, maybe not enough demand. This relates to expired food, a term we used in our previous coding session. Highlight the entire answer, drag it into a blank spot in the codes pane, and when prompted, name the new code Expired Food, then click OK. Overall, this coding process went smoothly and was fairly straightforward, especially since we're already familiar with the workflow from the previous session. Now that we've coded our text, the next step is to merge these newly created codes with our existing codes. To do this, highlight the new codes by clicking the first code in the codes pane, then holding Shift on your keyboard and clicking the last code. Right-click anywhere on the highlighted list and select Copy from the menu. Next, navigate to our top-level codes. Let's close the tab showing the survey data in the table format to give ourselves more space to work with. In the top-level codes pane, right-click on a blank area and select Paste from the menu. It may look a little messy at first, but we'll organize things by sorting the codes into positive and negative sections. As you recall from the previous video, you can click on a code and drag it into either the negative or positive feedback parent code. The first code we'll sort is Better Hours. A respondent indicated they wanted extended hours, so we'll drag the code into negative feedback. Next is Clean Store, and this is a code we've worked with before, so we'll pause on that one for a moment. My approach here is to first move codes that don't exist under either negative or positive feedback. We'll address similar and overlapping codes in a moment. Expired Food and Good Selection already exist, as does High Prices, so we'll come back to those. There's a question code we can ignore, and then Need a Training Program. We'll drag that into negative feedback to address areas for improvement. Nice Displays is a new positive code, so we'll drag that into positive feedback. Lastly, Poor Selection and Unknowledgeable Staff both already exist, so we'll come back to those. If you recall from the previous workshop, when you have duplicate or overlapping concepts, you need to merge them rather than creating duplicates. For example, if you simply drag Clean Store into another Clean Store code, it will create a second layer instead of merging. To do it correctly, right-click on the code you want to merge, the one you want to dissolve, in this case Clean Store, and select Cut. Next, right-click on the code you want to merge into, the other instance of Clean Store, and select Merge into Selected Code. When the Merge Settings window appears, leave everything as it is and click OK. We'll do the same thing for Expired Food. Right-click on it and select Cut, then right-click on the expired food code and select Merge into Selected Code, then click OK. Then for Good Selection, right-click on the newest instance, select Cut, then right-click on the other instance of Good Selection and select Merge into Selected Code, then click OK. Next is High Prices. We'll right-click on the newest instance, select Cut, then right-click on the other instance of High Prices and select Merge into Selected Code, then click OK. Next is pour selection. Right-click on the newest instance, select Cut, then right-click on the other instance of pour selection and select Merge into Selected Code. Then click OK. Lastly, we'll do the same thing for unknowledgeable staff. Right-click on the newest instance, select Cut, and then right-click on the other instance of unknowledgeable staff and select Merge into Selected Code. Then click OK. All right, so at this stage, we've imported our survey data, coded the responses, and then merged those codes with our existing ones. The purpose of this is to bring everything together within our research project. For example, whether people mention high prices in Google reviews, in the survey, or in the focus group, it's still the same concept, high prices. By merging, we make sure similar feedback is grouped consistently across all sources. That wraps up this step. When you're ready, let's move on to the next video.